Well, it hasn't all been smooth sailing for the Labor Party and its leader Anthony Albanese this year. The Prime Minister has seen a dip in the polls after being accused of inaction on climate and cost of living pressures. Over the last week or so, Labor has made a last-ditch attempt to win over voters before the new year. It's rushed through its industrial relations changes through Parliament. That was a big win for the government. Also has released a migration strategy responding to concerns about the numbers and, of course, the overhaul of the NDIS, all in the last week. So what else is in store for 2024? Joining me now is Redbridge Group Director Simon Welsh. Simon, it's been a big year, but this year really needs to ramp up for the Labor Party at a federal level, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right, Laura. It's the year in which they've got to not only sort of stabilise but turn around the trend that we've seen in the polling over the last few months. There's this decline in their vote. I think this year will be interesting. I think the first thing to say about 2024 politically is the nature of the polling and the nature of the economy at the moment. I think the first thing to say is it looks pretty unlikely that we'll see an election at the back half of this year, which is feasibly possible. The earliest the date can be set is from August onwards. So we could theoretically see an election this year, but I think the polling and the economic circumstances would probably make that pretty unlikely unless there's some remarkable turnaround sort of in the early stages of next year. I think the defining feature, of for next year politically will be this schism that we're seeing between inner middle metro suburban areas and our outer suburbs and our regional centres. That's the schism that we're seeing in our research. It's the schism that we saw in the referendum result. And I think what we're going to see over 2024 is this, what we're calling sort of the battle for the battlers. This is going to be sort of the defining force going into the next election. 2022 election was very much about those middle university educated, middle class inner Melbourne, inner suburban, seats. 2025 is going to be about these outer suburban regional sort of centres. And the reason I say that is what we're seeing in our research is in those inner middle seats, we're sort of saying, yes, we see frustration that not enough is being done around cost of living, not enough is being done around climate, those sorts of issues. But there's still a sense of goodwill in those areas. Those areas they're not as economically precarious as other areas. So there's still a sort of a big goodwill in this sense that at least it's not the Morrison government. So that still keeps coming up in the focus groups. At least it's not the Morrison government.
What do they
Absolutely,
say?
Yeah.
What's the comparison there?
The main comparison point, that there's a few of them, but the main one is often around they're doing good stuff in terms of foreign relations. They're rebuilding Australia's sort of reputation internationally, which was seen to take a hurt under the Morrison government. Also things around climate and just some of the good stuff that they've done around looking after disadvantaged people, the job seeker stuff and so forth. So there's still a bit of goodwill in those inner middle suburban areas. That doesn't necessarily carry through to those outer suburbs, which have just been brutalised by the economic conditions, the cost of living crisis, and those regional centres. I mean, there was media coverage down here in Victoria over the weekend. We've got people living in shanty towns in the bush because they can't afford housing. They can't afford to rent somewhere. And we hear these stories of sort of entrenched homeless communities now, even in southeast Queensland. We're hearing this in the group. People are telling us about, they drive down the street and they see homeless people that are set up, that are, been there for a while, clearly there for the long haul. And that has ripples. It causes people to feel not only empathy, which we do see, empathy for the people that are homeless, but also to feel concerned, threatened about their own economic sort of position. So people are looking at that and sort of going, well, there, but for the grace of God, go I. If I was to lose my job tomorrow, that could well be me. So those outer suburban and regional centre areas are on fire. I think that's going to be the battle over the next year. And I think both sides have their challenges in trying to reach those voters. And the first is for Labor. People are looking at this government now that in those, particularly those outer areas, that they're looking at it and they're going, well, it's not just frustration now. It's that these guys don't seem to have a plan. It seems like they're kind of to build the plane while it's flying, to use the old cliche. And what we've seen over the last couple of weeks with the immigration stuff just adds to that.
Yeah.
So there's this loss of faith, this sense of, well, where's the policy? Where's the plan to start to deal with this sort of thing? So I think Labor needs to very quickly in the new year start to build confidence that it has a plan to help these communities that feel so left out. They feel like they've been so neglected over the course of this past 12 months.
So are they after, one homogenous group, of course, everyone has different challenges. Is it about, government handouts? Is it about government doing something more drastic, actually getting their teeth into some reform and changing, the structure of society? Is that what people want, or they want, a bit of a sugar hit to get them through and they can see the other side?
I don't think anyone's going to say no to a sugar hit right now, such as the precariousness of their situation. But they recognise that in the Folk Street, people will talk about that as in those terms of just being a short-term kind of sugar rush kind of things. They understand that that's not going to solve the problem. It might help with the groceries for a month, but it's not going to solve the problem. So what they're looking for is big reform, and it's big reform that really addresses some of the economic inequity, some of the power inequities in our economy. So it's very much, I think we spoke about this last week, very much about sort of wanting to punch up, not punch down. So it's very much about looking at corporate predation, looking at profiteering, those sorts of things that are really adding to the cost of living. There's a big flavour of that coming through in the groups, making sure that these corporates that are banking these record profits are paying their fair share of tax. All those sorts of things, all about those higher power, higher status economic groups, making sure that they're paying their fair share.
And Simon, just as we look at the change in leadership in Queensland, I wonder if you've done much in that state. Is Stephen Miles going to make much of a difference? Can he improve the polls for Labor? Or is this just a bit of a Hail Mary at this point?
Look, without knowing what his agenda is or what it might be and what policy...
I don't think anyone knows. I'm not sure he even knows at the moment, to be honest.
It's my very nice way of saying he's got a hell of a big job to turn it around from where they are now. Everything that we're seeing in our research at the moment looks pretty bleak for Labor in Queensland.
Okay. Well, on that note, we'll leave it there, Simon. We'll see you soon.